Welcome to the Mindset Connection podcast. Thank you for joining us. We are your hosts, Jennifer Clearwaters and Cindy O'Connell, and thank you for tuning in for our 26th episode today. And we are jumping right in because today we have the honor of welcoming Dr. Patrick Roth to our podcast. Thank you for being here. I'm going to just jump in and tell you a little bit about all of the wonderful things that he's done. Dr. Patrick Roth is a neurosurgeon, an author, an educator, and the founder of New Jersey Brain and Spine. He has been the Chief of Spinal Surgeon at Hackensack Meridian Hospital since 1997. He's also the chairman for the Department of Neurosurgery at Hackensack Meridian Hospital. Dr. Roth has written numerous books, including one that he's just releasing soon called Flourishing, the Ultimate Career Capital, as well as another one, Managing Back Pain for Dummies. He's also written numerous journal articles and has done presentations on subjects such as managing pain, what's new in neurosurgery, connecting with patients, stretching and strengthening exercise, and also presentations on kettlebells. Dr. Roth is also a lecturer for the St. George Medical School and is a facilitator at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine, teaching a course called Human Dimensions. Also, after medical school and all the things that he's done, he returned to education and earned a Master's of Health Administration from Columbia. So we are jumping right in. Thank you, Dr. Roth, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So tell us your story of all the different aspects of medicine and concentrations. Why did you decide to be a neurosurgeon?
Yeah, it's an interesting story for me. I went into medical school thinking that I was going to become a neurologist. My father was a neurologist. My sister is a neurologist. And my father would regale us at the dinner table with stories of patients and diagnoses. And in addition to being a neurologist, he was an entrepreneur. He had his own business. And I just looked at that as an ideal career. And so I went to medical school thinking that's what I would do. And when I did my neurology clerkship, I was disappointed and disillusioned a little bit because as much as I loved neuroscience and I loved neurology, I found it a bit impotent, and so we would spend hours figuring out where the lesion was in the central nervous system. And then when it came time to treatment, oh, there's no treatment for this. Next patient, please. And so I'm like, wow, I don't know if I can do that. And then during medical school, you have the opportunity to do both surgery and medicine. And you're looking at a similar spectrum of patients, but it gives you a really good comparison of the way surgeons and medical doctors think. And I realized that the way that surgeons think resonated with me. It's action-oriented, it's decisive. And I remember one mentor in surgery when I had to stand up in front of a group of people, and I was asked a question about what to do. And I said, well, we could do this or we could do that. And the surgeon said, Dr. Roth, that's what he spoke. Dr. Roth, you have the right to be wrong, but you do not have the right to not decide. And that was a profoundly influential moment for me. And I realized that, yes, I can be a very decisive person and I like being action oriented. And so I just combined my love of neuroscience with the action oriented aspects of surgery.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so impressive. It really is. So we talked about before we started recording about all of your books and your journey for the books. How did you get into actually writing? How did you even have the time to do that? Your busy practice.
Well, I always say it was preposterous for me to be a writer because I wasn't a good writer. I was the kind of kid in college where, the paper would be due the next day and I'd have a blank paper in front of me. I didn't even know how to get started and I hated the process. But what happened to me, it's a personal story, but I hurt my own back a year into practice. And herniated disc and had a partial foot drop. And I continued to work with a fair amount of pain and this neurologic deficit. And I was telling my patients, you got to exercise. Meanwhile, I was terrified of exercising myself. And so hypocrisy wasn't lost on me. And so after a while, I finally just got up and started exercising, despite the fact that I felt vulnerable. And of course, it made me feel better. And then I said, wow, that's really interesting. And I started reading, and I wrote a really interesting book by a physical therapist from Florida about the multifidus back pain solution, where he looked at strengthening people's multifidus muscles, which are these little muscles in your back that are really an important part of your core. And so I started doing that as well, and it made me feel much better. Then I started experimenting on some of my patients and trying to convince them, try this. They'd come back, the ones that did it, come back and say, wow, that really helped. And I realized that message wasn't out there in the medical community. And I wanted to put it out there. So I started writing. And that whole book, I probably started about 10 times, but once I got rolling and once I got a contract to publish it, I wrote the book in about 6 months. And the routine I used was to get up early in the morning because I was a parent also. So I wanted to be with my kids during the day. So I either had to do it after they went to sleep or before they woke up. And I chose to do it before they woke up. And I got into this routine, especially on Saturday and Sunday mornings, of just writing. What I learned, though, from doing that was that I realized that I solve my problems by writing about them in life. And so if there's something that I want to figure out, I start to write about it. If there's something I want to learn, I write about it.
Journaling.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Jen makes everybody journal.
Yeah,
If you
well, I
ever
think
go to
it's-
her as a therapist, you're going to
You're
get
gonna
a
have to
journal.
write.
Yeah. Well, no, I totally believe in it. It's therapeutic, but it also, not only does it answer questions that are unresolved, but it gives you direction as well.
Yes.
And by the way, getting up really early in the morning, having coffee, and being by yourself in your study and writing
Amen.
is like
That's our
it's
everyday.
dopamine releasing,
It
right?
It is.
And I actually and I'm such a nerd, but I go to bed at night on Friday night and Saturday night, knowing I'm going to get up early in the morning and write, and it's going
With
to
an
be
excitement.
euphoric. With an excitement, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, it's protected time,
Yeah.
right? Before the
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
can get to you, it's that lovely, wonderful time where you can just have a little
But
bit
to
of
me,
stillness.
but to me, it's priceless in life to read something someone else has written or to write something that you didn't know beforehand and have this aha moment, and it's euphoric and it's a dopamine releasing, and it's becomes habitual.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I'm just going to, just an aside, prior to this, we were talking about Dr. Roth. He's way too young to retire, but about retirement, and I don't think you're going to have any problem. You're
Yeah.
going to be, you
He's
love
not retiring.
life,
He's
and
pivoting.
he's pivoting,
That's right.
pivoting, yeah. So putting my glasses on because I read the article in the Dragon Door that you wrote about keeping a kettlebell under your desk. And I was like, Jen, we're having this guy on.
Mhm.
This guy, I love that. And it was because if people sit a lot and,
Right.
sitting's the new smoking, people are
That's
going to
exactly
die
right.
from sitting.
Yeah.
I was looking for a certified strength and fitness coach on your CV. You don't have it.
No.
But here's what you wrote. I'm just going to read a quote from it. However, personal and professional experience led me to shift my focus towards enabling patients suffering with back pain to help themselves independently without their surgeon, therapist, chiropractor, and medications. And isn't that what all of us want, is for people to be able to, heal thyself, right?
Right.
So what was it? You told your little story, but what did you actually do? What was your physical exercise? You said you started to exercise. What did you do? And what was the difference in how you approached your patients after you had your own issue?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a slow transition, but I think in the beginning, I was so focused on finding the elusive pain generator in a patient and then finding some minimally invasive way to treat that surgically. That was my initial focus as
So
a
you were
surgeon.
looking for where in the body
Yeah.
is this pain coming
And then
from?
how can I stop it?
How can I
right?
stop? Leverage technology, because there's some great technology out there. There's MRs, but there's stuff beyond MRIs. There's something called SPECT scanning where you can look at inflammation in the body.
Never heard
Lots
of
of different ways to ascertain what it is that's creating it. But first of all, I learned something through experience as a doctor, which is you can't always find that.
Mhm.
Maybe 50% of the time you can't find it. And my own personal experience of overcoming back pain with exercise really changed my mind about this whole mind-body relationship. There's a concept called embodied cognition, which is a fascinating psychological concept, but it's kind of like it's the mind's influence on the body and the body's influence back on the mind. So, for example, if I were to give you an inventory of questions to answer, but made you do it with a pencil in your mouth, so you were in a forced smile position, you would give different answers than if you didn't have the pencil in your mouth. And another really interesting example of it is they did this great study where they took these subjects, put them into two different rooms. In one room, they talked about green, verdant, young, nubile. In the other room, they talked about old, white, decrepit.
Mhm.
And then they had the subjects change rooms. But the experiment was they measured the speed at which they walked from one room to the other. And of course, priming your mind with old words makes you walk slower.
Yes.
And so each is an example. One's the body working on the mind, the other one's the mind working on the body. And so I recognized as a doctor that you could tap into this incredible synergy between mind and body, either by strengthening the body or by strengthening the mind, or ideally by doing both. And so I still have that same habit as a doctor. I'll do a deep dive into understanding where their pain generator is coming from, and then maybe propose some potential solutions, some of which may be injection, some of which may be surgical. But more than that, always I attack try to attack their brain and their body. I try to change the way they think about their pain. I try to change their body and leverage this mind-body or embodied cognition relationship.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered the question. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, do you meditate?
I do, although, you know what they say about meditation, which is the people who need it most don't have the time for it. So I'm kind of guilty of being that. But my brother-in-law actually has really got into Buddhism and meditation, and absolutely swears by it. He goes to these retreats where he doesn't talk for days on end. You've been there, and it sounds fascinating to me. But I guess this is called the mindfulness connection, right? This podcast.
Yes.
My mindfulness is not necessarily meditation, but my mindfulness is being in the moment with whatever I'm doing. And, so for example, exercise has mindfulness for me.
Yes.
Running is mindfulness for me. And being on this podcast is mindfulness to me. I'm totally here and nowhere else. Or being with a patient is mindfulness for me.
And
I don't do formal meditation.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you have to. I was just curious because you're speaking as someone that would have a meditation
language.
You are.
Exactly.
And mindfulness is being present in the moment.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I get it with the exercise too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
true.
running is definitely my meditation.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
walking can be a meditation.
Yeah.
Prayer is a meditation.
By the way, I have euphoria before I walk, before I run. One of the habits I have in medicine, which I love, is right before I walk in the door to see a patient, I just stop for a second to remind myself, this is another human being who has probably waited a long time, has significant issues, and I need to be present during this conversation. And we talked before, I need to listen.
Yes.
Although the patient wants to hear what I have to say, I want to hear what the patient has to say also, because that's where synergy comes.
Providers out there, please listen to Dr. Roth. Even when you have a book of 50 or 60, please listen. But that brings up something that you said to us prior to starting to record. You said to us that you are a surgeon by day and a protector of patients by night.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what do you mean by that?
Well, so one of the things that as being in surgery now for 35 years, one thing that I've come to believe, which is that surgeons take advantage of patients. They often use the word "you need surgery," which is to me really virtually never something that should be said. And what I believe rather is that since I'm a surgeon, I'm going to explain what surgery entails to a patient, but I'm going to give them a whole bunch of alternative treatments as well, and let them decide. I'm going to educate them so they understand the condition as well as they can understand it, and let them decide from the options. Because, people always say there's the right treatment for a particular disease, but there's a third part of that. There's the right treatment for a particular disease for a particular patient. Right. So if you are naturalistic, a lot of times the right treatment for you is not surgery. It's something else. Some people just say, I believe in modern medicine, fix me. And that's their mindset. Okay, fine. And then we'll go in that direction as well. But I have to listen to what their mindset is, where they're coming from. But mostly I just have to educate, because I think people make good decisions. What we like to say is education is an independent determinant of health. The more that I can educate the patient, the better health that patient will experience going forward.
Yeah.
Because they're just expecting you, okay, I'm coming in here, fix my problem.
Yeah.
Because people want immediate gratification. They don't want to work at something.
Well, especially when they're in pain.
Yeah.
They want the pain to stop.
Yeah.
Just make it go away.
In my latest book, I talk about mindsets, and we've covered a couple of them already. So what I think you just picked up on is what I call the slow fix mindset, which is we have a quick fix society, but there's something really appealing to me about slow fixes.
Yes.
They're more powerful, they're more endurable. And the other thing we talked about a little before was what I in the book call the health mindset, which is it's a really important transition to separate in your mind healthcare and health. Healthcare is what we offer as doctors, but it's not what patients want. Patients want health, and you can build health. You can build health by the way you exercise, the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you handle stress. We talked about meditation before.
Yes.
These are all ways of building health,
Exactly.
and patients we don't learn about that in medical school.
Right.
Mm.
So you're also, and because this comes up in a lot of the podcasts that we've had, a lot of the sessions, discipline. It is everything you just spoke about. Health, having good health is a discipline.
Yeah.
It's a discipline. There's a great book out there. I'm sure other people have talked about it, but Atomic Habits, if you haven't
Yes.
read
Oh,
it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
It's in our book too.
Yeah, is it in yeah, and I so strongly believe in it.
Mhm.
And it's not just, I mean, health is one obvious example. The way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you exercise, you can build health by putting in relative small amounts of energy into it in a disciplined way each day. But it goes beyond that. It goes, to goodwill gestures, for example. Doing goodwill gestures
Yes.
is also an atomic habit that
Yes.
builds incredible things over time. And it's the power of compound interest, of course,
Yeah.
that makes these things so powerful over time.
So this is off the script, but
Mm.
so before you go into surgery, and how long would a typical surgery last?
I mean,
Anywhere from,
Again, I look for small solutions to people's
Okay.
problems. So I don't, for example, the ultimate negative 4-letter word in surgery is fusion.
Hmm.
I typically just do 1-level fusions.
Okay.
And so my raises range in length from 1 to 2 hours,
Okay.
I'd say.
So before you go into surgery, do you have like a little ritual that you do, or you just kind
How
of
do you
or you
prepare?
just say,
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, one thing that I'm absolutely obsessed with music. So I spend a lot of time between surgeries listening to music and creating playlists because I believe fundamentally.
you should listen to the sound bath person we
Yeah,
had.
yeah,
That's she's
yesterday,
also
the sound bath.
Oh, is that
She's
right?
has a
singer.
master's in social work, and she says music is medicine.
Yeah, and so because I grew up listening to rock and roll and I loved it, and I love so many songs from my past, I guess my era would be the 70s, but I made this decision. Initially, my decision, I was going to listen to jazz. So I studied jazz and I listened to it and I listened to it and I developed a taste for it. Guess
Mhm.
what? Nobody around me wanted to hear it. So I changed gears and then
Yeah, because you have a team with you in the OR.
yeah, it was a whole team. And the nurses were like, no, we're not putting this on. So I got into alternative rock or indie rock, and it's kind of like, from my perspective, a continuation of the rock that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that it's like a fountain. In order to drink from a fountain, you have to restore the fountain. You can't just listen to what you like. You have to spend some time listening to new stuff,
Yes.
learning. And
Adding
so,
it in.
anyway, one of the rituals I do is I prepare playlists, and I subject the people in the room to my playlist. But they like it. After a while, they begin to listen to it and like it. Also, there's Atul Gawande wrote a book about how it's kind of like medicine should be like the airline industry, where there should be checklists. And so one of the things I also do is I've set up an atmosphere in the operating room where everybody feels very comfortable challenging me if necessary, because I want to be challenged. If I'm standing on the wrong side of the patient, I want the nurse to say to me, "Isn't this a left-sided problem? Why are you standing on the right?" "Oh, thank you very much."
Mm-hmm.
So it
Mhm.
creates
So it's a team
safety
effort.
and quality, having everybody feel comfortable. And that's you've probably heard the stories about I think it's the Korean Airlines, where they don't allow 2 Korean pilots to be in a plane together because it's such a deferential culture. You want your co-pilot to say, "Hey, moron, what are you doing? You're flying
Mhm.
too low." Or you want that
Yeah.
kind of pushback, and I want that in the operating room. So I spent a lot of time trying to make it a very positive and friendly and environment. It's like a little microcosm
team.
as a team. And of course, I always, before I see a patient, a couple days before, I always bring them back into the office. I go over the procedure, the consent, and I make sure I have the films. And so, because you just don't want to, you try to eliminate mental mistakes. We all make physical mistakes. It's part of life. But if you can eliminate most of your mental mistakes through being organized and, again, mindful and present,
Yeah.
is key. So
Okay.
So helpful.
Great.
Dr. Roth, how do you feel that medicine has changed since when you first started to now? Either good or bad.
well, no, I think good for the most part, but we'll talk about this in a second. I think there's still some fundamental changes that need to be made. But I mean, the big change in my field is that when images could be digitalized and moved around easily, and then computers can use those digital images to create navigation systems. So we use a system, for example, called Stealth, where computer can figure out, if you can show the computer where the skull is, it knows where the brain is and every part of the brain. And so it's kind of like a global navigation. You can look at a map before you go driving somewhere. but you can just turn that on and follow the directions.
Right.
So we have that in surgery as well. So that part of medicine has changed a lot and for the better, but the way that medicine is constructed still needs to change. And I think AI is going to do that, actually. I think artificial intelligence, because what you don't realize until you get into medicine is, as a doctor, how many predictions you make in a single day. Patients come to me, what do you think? What do you think? And I answer honestly what I think, but guess what? I'm guessing
Yep.
a lot of the time. And what I don't get the benefit of as a human is, hey, did that prediction work or not work? Because it may have taken years to unwind.
Mm-hmm.
With artificial intelligence, if you keep feeding back the information about what its predictions turned out to be, it keeps getting better, whereas humans really get better slowly.
Right.
And so I think that's going to change. So diagnoses, triaging, what tests you order, all going to be done by artificial intelligence. And that's going to be a major positive step for medicine. The other thing is you always have to look at incentives to understand systems. And medicine is fee for service. And as long as it's fee for service, you're going to have corruption.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a surgeon, not only am I only paid when I do an operation, which is a crazy incentive, but the bigger the operation that I propose, the more I get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. I mean, there's this whole thing called value-based care, which is why I went back to school, by the way, to get my master's. But I think it's wonderful. But right now, the analogy is made is medicine has its leg in two different canoes, and it's afraid to jump into one canoe versus the other. So value-based care hasn't really come to be. But when it does, when we are paid as physicians to deliver outcomes, patient comes to me in pain, I should be paid handsomely to get rid of their pain. But I shouldn't be paid just to do an operation.
Right.
Right.
And so it's a totally different concept. That's the
Right.
second thing that I think medicine has to go through. And when that happens, it'll be better for patients and better for doctors.
Yeah. Better for everyone.
Tell us about this course that you teach.
Human
Because you
dimension.
were
gonna
very,
ask that.
and he's a
Yes.
big smile on his
Yes.
face.
Well-
Because when you
Human
were
dimension.
we were talking earlier before that.
So by the way, just so you know, the book that I wrote, I'm hoping that the medical school adapts as the book for this course. But the concept of the course, it's called Human Dimension, and the concept, there's many concepts in the course, but one concept of the course is, we talked about this a little before, the distinction between health and healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So what the course teaches is that healthcare accounts for about 15% of health. So think about this. Doctors give healthcare, right? That's only really contributing to 15% of patients' health. It's not an efficient system. There are other determinants of health, which they call the social determinants of health. And there are things like patients' education, patients' income, patients' environment, patients' genetics. And so those are things that we teach now in medical school for our students to think about. Because again, it's like a supply and demand thing. What the patient is demanding is health, not health care, but what we're supplying is health care.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, I try to take it further than that. There are other determinants of health, even beyond those obvious ones that I learned about when I went back for my master's, and we teach some really interesting ones. So, for example, mindset. I'm really interested in the work by this scientist at Stanford named Alia Crum. And
Yes,
she,
Mhm.
you guys know her? So
Mhm.
she talks about how what we think about our health is an independent determinant of our health. So, for example, in one of the studies that she talks about is, if you were to ask people, how active are you? And then record that. And then go and actually record how active they are by putting on accelerometers and step counters and stuff like that. Which of those two things do you think contributes more to longevity? How active you think you are, or how active you actually are?
How active you think you are.
Exactly.
Right. This is in
And
your
that's a
mind.
crazy no, they both contribute,
Yeah.
but it's a crazy concept. Again, so your mindset about your health is an independent determinant of your health. So anyway, that's what the course is about. And
Fascinating.
Yes.
it's a wonderful course.
Yeah.
It's the school's won all sorts of awards with the course, and also by the teachers of the course. We all have this great camaraderie, and we look forward to. We enjoy each other as much as we enjoy teaching the course. So it's great. It's been a great experience.
And that's a nice break for you from not being in the hospital to go.
Absolutely.
Actually
And it's
teach.
so great to be around kids that are
Yeah.
enthusiastic. Well, the other thing we do in the course is we do identity formation. So, and this is something that's been of great interest to me. You know, the students are really interested in developing their identity.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell them is, and I tell them the story of myself, which was I was a very shy guy in medical school. And when I went into neurosurgery, it wasn't something that I did intentionally, but I realized on some level, guess what? Patients don't want a shy, indecisive surgeon. And so
No.
I developed this persona as a doctor that's very decisive. I wasn't being inauthentic, but it just happened organically, and I became this decisive person. But when I'm not a doctor and I'm outside of that, I return to my normal self, which is, kind of shy and
Kind of shy.
you know,
I think you had your doctor hat on when you walked in here.
maybe, yeah.
He was ready.
You were ready.
But Dr. While we're talking about the course, give in the book that maybe will go into your course. Tell our listeners the concept of your latest book. What is it? What is it all about?
So many different things, but so one thing we touched on earlier, and that is I talk a lot about this iterative method of learning. I start off by saying one of the most important things we can tell students is get good at something. Don't worry, so we always tell them follow your passion or look for your calling, but I take exception to that, and I really believe that if you get good at something and you spend a lot of energy in mastering it, that the passion will follow and the calling will follow. So that's one thing. It's really important. So for the students, I tell them when they're picking their careers, don't worry so much about what you pick. Just think of something you may like and then dive in deep and get really good at it. You'll be passionate about it. I promise you that. I talk a lot about pivoting in the career, and we talked about this a little bit before the show, but so I have this belief that if you take very deliberate time periods, for me it's early weekends, but it could be any time, and you intentionally learn something, and oftentimes that learning something is maybe a little bit tangential to what your career matters are. You can by learning that, you start to make comparisons with that in your career, and it creates creativity. And then you take what you've learned and you express it in some way. You can express it through teaching it. You can express it through conversation. But ideally, you express it through writing. And this is what I recommend to all the aspiring doctors. Start to write. Journal, but write. It creates clarity. It creates creativity. So that's another part of the book. I talk about these mindsets. Mindsets for doctors and mindsets for patients. But we talked a couple of mindsets for patients already, the slow fix mindset, the health mindset. But a couple of the other ones are something which I really use a lot in my practice called the, oh my God, I forgot what I call it now.
That's all right.
Not
It'll
the,
come
not
to
the,
you.
adapt,
It'll come
not
to
the
you.
adaptable mindset, but the anti-fragile mindset it's called. And I got this from, there's a book called Anti-Fragile, which and the concept of anti-fragile is that if you take a piece of metal and you keep bending it, ultimately it breaks. But human things or living things, it's just the opposite. If you stress it over time, it gets stronger. And so many of my patients that come to me with back pain have what I call a vulnerable mindset. They think they have to avoid certain activities.
Yeah.
But instead of that, they
Don't
should look
do
at their
it.
body
Yeah.
as adaptable or anti-fragile. And if you push your body, stress your body, stress is a good thing unless there's too much. But if you stress your body over, and we talked about discipline, small amounts every day over a long period of time, your body gets stronger and it gets better. And I call it the anti-fragile mindset. So slow fix, anti-fragile, health. I talk a lot about a concept called attunement, which is a really interesting concept. I got this from Daniel Pink, who wrote a book, To Sell is Human, which is a great book. The attunement mindset is kind of like, I think of it as intellectual empathy. So if you think of empathy as feeling what a patient feels, I think that's to a certain extent. Some people have more than others naturally. I don't think I have a particularly large amount of that, but I'm very good at attunement, which is allowing the way I frame a case, frame the treatment, frame the diagnosis is through the perspective of the patient, not my own. As a surgeon, it's really easy to say, I want to do the case because you get the glory, you get the money, you get whatever, all these positive things. But if you simply let the patient's perspective rule, it's a very empowering thing, not only for the patient, but for you. And that's one of the, so I talk a lot about these soft traits of medicine: listening, attunement, empathy, aporia, which we talked a little bit about before. These are things that it's kind of like the martial arts. You think you're being passive, but you're actually being stronger with it. Right. And so, when doctors get their MD degree, they want to hide behind that to a certain extent, hide behind that shield. I'm a doctor, and
I'm a
therefore I'm
doctor.
going to tell you what to do. But real power is, as a doctor, is through influence, and influence comes from giving up power. So giving up your perspective, and I find that that's something that I learned throughout my career. But I want the students to have a head start and to start thinking about that early in their career.
So
Wow.
great.
Honestly, they
we come
must
take your class.
love yeah, I would love to sit in on your class.
When will the book
Absolutely.
be out, Dr. Roth?
Well, as soon as I find a publisher.
Okay, all right.
Or I'll just publish
Listen
it
out
myself.
there.
I don't know.
All right. So, what's a takeaway that you want? I mean, there were so many takeaways here, but what's a takeaway that you would want our listeners to know?
I guess maybe I'll pick up on something that we talked about earlier, which is the beauty of pivoting in life. You guys obviously know all about that because you guys have done that, and you can probably attest to how wonderful it is to do that.
It is.
But I think pivoting comes, this is what I look at as a medical career, and I think it applies to every career. We talked about this before, start off by getting good. Put a lot of energy into mastering your career. And then you'll hit a plateau at some point. When you hit that plateau, ask yourself 2 questions. What am I good at? And ask them honestly. And they're hard questions to answer. What am I good at, and what do I enjoy?
They may not be the same thing.
They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
But take the answer of those 2 questions and imagine a pivot. So one of the interesting things for me was that this has happened to me. I was an all-purpose neurosurgeon. I did the brain tumors and the aneurysms and the trauma and all that. But when I hit that plateau in my career and started asking myself the questions, I recognized that I really enjoyed spine care. And so I pivoted.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that restricting what you're willing to see would make you less popular and less in demand, but it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
People don't want jack of all trades. They want experts. And so by pivoting, not only am I a better doctor, but I enjoy my practice more. And so I think one of the messages I'd like people to think about in their careers is first master, and then don't be afraid to pivot.
Don't get stuck.
Yeah,
Don't
don't
get
get stuck.
stagnant.
Because
That's
there's
when-
always something
and-
more to learn.
And
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
you can tell. I mean, I'm sure when a patient walks in and you are giving your full attention, actually listening to them. Oh, so tell me exactly where the pain, whatever it is that you're saying, I'm sure that you connect right away.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that you
It's all
are.
about connection.
It is all about connection.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's so funny because someone said to me, "Oh, you're a really good teacher." And I said, "I know." And they said, "Wow, and you're humble too." And I said, if I don't trust in myself and believe that I'm good at this, why would you?
Yeah. No,
Why
you're
would
right.
I want to come to you?
Why would I want to come
Exactly.
to you?
Except, you're right, but it takes a while. It's not like you were,
Oh no,
you
this
were probably
is
humble in the beginning,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But at some point, it's okay to
It's
say, something,
okay.
I worked really hard at this, I'm pretty good at it.
Yes.
It's okay to say.
And I've
I put
studied
the work
and
in.
researched.
I put the
Yeah.
work into
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yep. So, Dr. Roth, how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah.
Because you told
We
us
wanna
you're
know
doing
your-
something every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
They're all different. You're very busy. How do
Well,
you take care of you?
So again, I put a lot of energy into learning about the building blocks of health. So I'll tell you what I think is an interesting story. I discovered that I have some cardiac risks. I was having some PVCs, which are premature ventricular contractions, and I had an echo. This is about 5 years ago, and the echo showed that my heart was slightly enlarged. And the original interpretation was athletic heart.
Mm.
But the cardiologist that I saw said, I think it's a hypertensive heart. I think you should go on an antihypertensive medication. And so I did, and came back 5 years later, repeated the echo. And my heart was now normal sized. But he said, let's dive a little deeper. And there's now some windows into your atherosclerotic burden in your heart. You can do called the calcium CT. And the second one is you can do an ultrasound of your neck and look at the intimal medial thickness. And I did that, and I had some atherosclerosis that didn't seem like I should, because I keep myself pretty fit.
Mm-hmm.
So then I did a deeper dive into my cholesterol, and it turns out I have a genetic variant called LP(a), which gives people premature atherosclerosis.
Mm.
So then I went on a statin, because the concept they have now, although the medications are changing, is to drive your LDL cholesterol down to 50. And so I did that. But I said, let me just do a deeper dive into diet. And so now all the cardiologists are pushing this Mediterranean diet. But I went further, and I read a bunch of books looking at plant-based diets.
Did you read the China study?
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Colin Campbell's book,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that was a fascinating book. And there's several books that have followed that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if in the China study, he looks at these rural villages in
Right.
China and shows that there's no heart disease at all,
Right.
and
Yeah,
they're vegans.
nothing.
Now, being a vegan is very difficult,
Mhm.
particularly for me. Cheese, giving up cheese is really difficult. But
With an Italian wife, yeah.
with Italian
Yeah.
wife, exactly. So
Uh-huh.
I switched. Now I guess people would describe my diet as plant-forward Mediterranean. So
Mhm.
I eat, and it was such an easy transition. I eat a lot of bean dishes, a lot of nuts for protein, occasional tofu. I haven't had any real chicken or beef in 2 years, for the most part, and I love it. And one
So
of the,
can I ask you a
yes,
question? Do you
yeah.
actually look to see, am I getting a complete protein? Because in that book, he says you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, no, I don't look. I don't
Okay,
look.
so you don't.
No,
Okay.
I don't look. And I'm probably there's been some certain benefits from the diet. First, as soon as I went on it, I lost about 10 pounds.
Mhm.
Probably a mixture of fat and muscle, but I'm just a smaller person now, which is fine. The other thing that I noticed immediately, I track my sleep maybe once a week on my Apple Watch. I sleep. I could never understand why I wasn't getting as much quality sleep as I wanted to get. I went on the plant-based diet, and my quality of sleep went up immediately, which was fascinating to me.
Yes.
And I think it's hard to digest meats, particularly at night when you go to sleep.
Mhm.
Not to get into bowel habits now, but plant-based diet is really good for that as well.
It's fiber.
And
Yep.
I never had a problem with energy, but if anything, my energy is higher. So I think it's
Interesting.
been a really good. Plus,
Working
look, if
for
you look
you.
at the whole environmental part of it, I mean, just the meat industry, chicken and meat industry is horrible.
Mhm.
The hormones that they inject, the antibiotics that are given, and just
Mess.
the environment. It's an environmental disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The methane that's produced. So I like it from an environmental point of view also. That's my diet component. I've always believed. I made the decision a long time ago. In terms of efficiency, I try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I just
Which
think it's really
is-
Me
important.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
At least.
absolutely.
And then exercise. I've gone through a whole bunch of transitions. One of the cardiologists also recommended that I do a little bit less weight training and a little bit more high intensity interval training. So I switched to that. I switched to a modified intermittent fasting. So I try to spread my dinner to breakfast to 16 hours.
Mhm.
And I do a lot. I do body weight exercises, push-ups, pull-ups.
Right.
I run. But I try to, I don't. I try not to get injured now.
Right.
So
Right.
I try to do
That's
it a little bit every day and not get
Exactly.
injured. That's kind of my
That's-
strategy.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
that's great.
All right.
Good.
So these are some questions that we ask everybody who comes on. How
Okay.
do you view failure?
Well, that's an easy one for me.
Okay.
Failure is an opportunity for growth. So I try not to take failure personally. If you look at kids and they're building blocks, the blocks get knocked over. They don't despair. They just start
They
building
just do it
blocks
again.
again. We could all
Yep.
be like children.
Yes.
Yes.
And I feel like,
That's a great
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah.
it's a lot of that comes. And I wish that I had read when I was young Carol Dweck's The Growth Mindset.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I really was influenced by that book because I wished if I had read it earlier, it would have influenced the way I brought my kids up.
Mhm.
But it influenced me, and so I really look at failure as an opportunity for growth.
So here's what I'm going to say to you. I sometimes would think like that, but I know now that everything I'm doing is at the right time. So you are influencing your children by the way they see you as an adult. So they are growing into better
I
human
agree.
beings
Yes.
I
because
totally
of
agree
it.
with you. And
So it's it doesn't matter that you didn't read it then. You read
Yeah.
it now
You read
and
it
you're
now.
acting on it.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And you might have read it later, early on in life, and went, "Oh, that was nice,"
Yeah,
but I
like-
can't really apply
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So what are your 3 most important strengths? Don't overthink it. He
I
laughs
think
because he knows he
a
has a lot of them.
willingness to change.
Ooh,
Be
love
one.
that.
you
Um,
speak right to
yeah.
our soul.
Willingness to change. I think what really helps you to go through pivots and changes in life is to have a pretty well defined value system.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I thought about this, and the thing that I value the most in the world is fairness. So I think a lot of decision making that I do ultimately comes down to fairness. I really
Mhm.
believe strongly in that concept. 3 strengths. I think I'm a hard worker. I mean, I'm willing
No
to
doubt.
I'm willing to put in the hard work to
That's-
get from point A to point B.
Yes.
Yeah.
Easy. Easy.
Yes.
So, you already answered our next questions because it's based off of our book. Our book is about how to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to have you read our book
Yes.
and give
And
us
give
a
us
little
our
review because
feedback,
I
yes.
really
Yeah.
am curious what you think. So, is there something that you want to change?
Just a yes or no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's holding you back?
I think the thing I hate most about myself, and I think it's partly in my upbringing, but is my relationship with money. So my father was very frugal and believed in frugality, and I was brought up that way. And I have plenty of money now, and yet I always have I have a scarcity mindset.
Yes.
I feel like I don't have
Mhm.
enough. And for me, it's not about, I'm not a flashy guy. I don't like to buy possessions, but for me, money is security. But letting go of the value of money, and as you approach retirement, and all you've ever done is save and put away and invest, going through this transition where you have to spend it down is, for me, because of this, I think, pathologic relationship that I had when I was younger with money, is very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I've put so much energy, like I manage my own money for the most part. I have people to help me, but I manage it. But I don't allow myself to look at it during the week at all. I look for 15 to 20 minutes every Saturday morning. I limit to that.
That's a good
And-
boundary,
Yeah, it
though.
is.
And,
It's a good
the
boundary.
whole
Yeah.
the whole Kurt Vonnegut Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Joseph Heller quote on the South Pacific yacht, when one says to the other, the guy that owns this yacht, did you realize the guy that owns this yacht makes more money in a day than we made in our combined writing careers in a lifetime? And the other guy says, yeah, but we have something he'll never have. And the first guy says, what? And he goes, enough. And this concept of enough
Yes.
is such an important concept to have, and but it's easier said than done. So that's required a lot of mental energy on my
Mhm.
part to get there. I'm not quite where I want to be yet, but I've worked very hard at it.
Okay.
That's really good.
Yeah, it is really good.
It's
And
really good.
yeah, so we're just about out of time. When we go off the air, I'm going to suggest something to you.
Mhm.
Not now.
Yeah, exactly. But-
Psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Yes,
just a little.
you can come anytime, Dr. Roth. But
Yeah.
we would definitely love to have you come back for part
Oh, yes.
two.
Oh, my
because
gosh.
this is just not enough time for what we want to
Yeah.
do. But we will, in the show notes, I will put all of Dr. Roth's books in the show notes so that you can find your way to him. And then if someone out there would love to book an appointment, where can they go to find you?
New Jersey, Brain and Spine. I'm up in Bergen County. Our office is in Paramus,
Okay.
New Jersey.
All right.
And
That's
so
wonderful.
Love meeting new patients.
Okay. All right. So we will be back again with another episode. And Cindy always has our closing
Yeah.
words of
So
wisdom.
remember to pause, breathe, and then respond instead of react, and to do hard things. And once again, Dr. Roth has
a
impressed
perfect
upon
example.
us, he is a perfect example of doing hard things
Yes.
and living a fulfilled life.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.